So hello and welcome to the Old Woodhouse, the history and conservation of a regional icon, presented by Jackson County Library Services and the Southern Oregon Historical Society. I'm Carrie Tannehill, Adult Services Librarian. So the views expressed in this program are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Jackson County Library Services. So today's presenters are Skip and Becky Geear. They will be sharing history and conservation of the Woodhouse, which is located north of Eagle Point. Thank you for being with us, Skip and Becky. And I'm going to go ahead and give it to you over to you to start your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi there, I'm Skip from the Woodhouse. My daughter Becky and I are here today to give you a presentation on the basic history and preservation of the famous Woodhouse in Eagle Point. We were scheduled to do this presentation live at both the Medford and Ashland Public Libraries last year in April. But due to the pandemic, the live show was canceled. So what we have done is to incorporate the live presentation that we were going to do, and we put it on video for you to see today virtually. Hope that you enjoy it.
Hi there, I'm Skip.
And I'm Becky.
And we are here today on behalf of the Woodhouse Preservation Group to talk to you about the history and the conservation of a regional icon, the Old Woodhouse.
Now, for those of you who may not know, the Woodhouse is located off Highway 62 in Eagle Point. So after this, we're going to have a Q&A session to answer any questions you may have. And so let's get started.
The Woodhouse Preservation Group consists of 3 people. Myself, Skip Gear, president. My wife, Charlotte Gear, who is the vice president, treasurer, secretary, gopher, and anything else we need her to do.
Bookkeeper.
Bookkeeper, yeah, that's true. And my daughter Becky is the board member at large. Next, we'll talk to you about the history of Marvin Wood and the Wood family. Marvin Sylvester Wood was born on October 8, 1836. Prior to 1861, Marvin moved to Lenawee County, Michigan, and he then joined the Michigan 11th Infantry on December 6, 1861, as a private. On September 20th, 1863, he suffered gunshot wounds to the jaw and to the left shoulder. For 3 days and nights, Marvin lay critically wounded on the battlefield, and he was listed as deceased on September 26th. However, Marvin was found alive on the battlefield, and he remained in the hospital until December of 1863. For some additional Civil War info, one of our Woodhouse volunteers spent numerous days researching Marvin and the Civil War, and he discovered the original casualty report with Marvin's name on it. In 1868, Marvin moved to Southern Oregon, along with his brother Dennis, and they filed a homestead claim on some land just north Eagle Point in 1869. At that time, they built a small cabin. As the story goes, as told by the Wood family, the cabin burned down the same year, and Dennis died in 1869 as well. He did not die in the fire. He died later on in 1869. In 1870, Marvin built the now famous Woodhouse on the homestead claim. The original claim is where the Willamette Egg Ranch, which is now a marijuana and hemp farm, used to be.
Marvin married Susan Griffith on May 21st, 1876, and they had 3 children, Ora, Mamie, and Walter. Susan was born on November 21st, 1855. Walter Wood, who is the most famous Wood in the family, was born in the Woodhouse on March 4th, 1881, and he lived in the Woodhouse for 93 years until he died on September 11th, 1974. He's pretty famous in the valley. A lot of people have always seen him or remember him on the porch of the Woodhouse as they went by. He rarely took a bath, so he was known for not smelling so well and having a really long, scraggly beard. But I think he used to walk into Eagle Point a lot, and people.
Yes, he did. Yes. Yep.
and people used to see him there. So he's the one that is usually talked about whenever we are referencing the Woodhouse.
And his white beard was pretty much black from tobacco juice that drooled out of his mouth.
Ew. Okay, so Marvin Wood and Susan Wood were divorced in 1900. Divorce was uncommon then, so this was kind of a rarity. Marvin Wood died on March 16th, 1924, and Susan Wood died in the Woodhouse on April 4th, 1929.
It is said that Susan's ghost still roams the Woodhouse, and we have personally seen evidence of that happening. As you can see in the photo, there is a ghost in the living room window of the Woodhouse. Now, that photo was taken by some people one day who came to the Woodhouse when it was closed, and they took that photo from the front fence. They had actually a 3/4 front view of the whole Woodhouse. They saw nothing in the window. It was a film camera, not a digital camera. And when they had the film developed and got it back, they saw this ghost image in the window. And some of the people that look at it say it looks like a woman wearing a bonnet with a dress, so we call the ghost Susan.
Creepy.
Totally. Other examples are several things in the Woodhouse have been moved around when no one's there. There was a throw rug in the living room that was folded in half, and we folded it back flat again, and next time we came back it was again folded in half. But the most mysterious thing is a steer skull that we have hanging over a window in the used to be center bedroom. It is now a dry bath. As you'll see in the photo, there is a rope clothesline hanging in front of the window with some vintage clothing on it. And you will see Walter sitting in the bathtub. He's our mannequin. It's in an old tin bathtub. And when we came to the house one day, that steer skull was no longer there. As you will see in the next photo, the steer skull was sitting upside down at the very end of the bathtub that Walter is sitting in. Now, there's no way the steer skull could have got there from its position over the window because of the clothesline unless somebody virtually picked it up, carried it over, and put it on the end of the tub, which is about 10 feet away.
Which can't happen because we have a 24-hour alarm system set up in the house, right?
That is correct, and nobody was there. And that happened within 24 hours. When we left one evening to go home, that steer skull was in the correct position over the window. We came back the next morning to do some more work on the Woodhouse, and the skull was at the end of the tub, as you see in the photo.
Ooh. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about the history of the actual Woodhouse. So the Woodhouse originally sat on what is now the southbound lane of Highway 62 on the property that eventually became the Miller Egg Ranch and then the Willamette Egg Ranch. In 1946, the Woodhouse was moved to its present location. That's because before that, there was just a dirt road, and they were now putting in Highway 62.
And the Woodhouse was in the way of the southbound lane of Highway 62, so it had to be moved.
And when they moved it, they actually turned it around. So it was originally facing Mount McLaughlin to see the mountain and have a nice view. And then when they moved it, Walter Wood had them turn the house around so that he could actually see now the cars driving by on Highway 62.
The property where it now sits was originally owned by the Aspole family, and Walter Wood bought 38 acres there prior to the house being moved to its present location.
All right, so before this, the Woodhouse was actually used as a traveler's home. So lots of people would travel probably between like Prospect and Medford and need a place to stay between the two. And so a lot of people would stay there as a traveler's home. I think the upstairs, didn't they have beds upstairs?
They had beds upstairs, and it was used like sort of a stage stop. Originally, there was a sign on the front porch that said Traveler's Home. The word Travelers was spelled incorrectly. During the renovation, we made a new sign, full scale, and we spelled the word Travelers incorrectly so that it would match the original sign.
Okay, and during this time, Susan Wood, when she lived there, she was actually also a midwife.
As a side note to that, while we were working on the Woodhouse, bringing it up to its present condition, a lady came by one day with her daughter. She was from Grants Pass, as I remember. And at that time, this was many years ago, she was 96 years old. And she came by to see the house because she heard that we were working on it. That lady, who was then 96, was born in the Woodhouse, and Susan was the midwife.
Cool.
After Walter's death in 1974, the house was abandoned at that time. The Woodhouse and the 38 acres was later purchased by a real estate speculator in California in 1983. However, what he didn't know was the land was unbuildable because it was full of vernal and fairy shrimp. I became a member of the Eagle Point Historical Society in 2000, and I was appointed by the board of directors at that time Woodhouse chairman. The Woodhouse was donated to the Eagle Point Historical Society in 2000 with a land lease on 1 acre for $200 a month, which was quite a bit, but it was one of those take it or leave it deals. Preservation work on the Woodhouse for the Eagle Point Historical Society began at that time.
So we actually found, where did you get this? It's a music video that somebody put together, like a montage of the Woodhouse?
Yeah, it's a video that came to me. I don't know where it came from or when it was recorded. By looking at the video, I feel it was probably recorded in the late 1990s because the house was pretty much in the same condition as when we started on its renovation.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and play that video for you now so you can see it.
There's memories of children that played here years ago. The old tire swing moves when the gentle breezes blow. The windmill slowly turning, the barn is standing strong. What once was a pretty picture, now something's really wrong. Now we all have our loved ones that's old and turning gray, like the tumbling down old farmhouse. They're starting to decay, but we should not neglect them or leave them to their own, 'cause it took a heap of loving to make our house a home. Oh yes, to make our house a home.
That was a great little video of the Woodhouse. As you can see, that's how it looked before we started working on it. You can't help feeling sorry for the old house. It was just about ready to fall down. The renovation work on the Woodhouse was completed in 2001. All the renovation work was done by volunteers and with money that was donated to the Eagle Point Historical Society at the time. Just to make it clear, the Eagle Point Historical Society owned the Woodhouse at that particular point in time. We replaced the shingles that was on the house. They came off of another old house, so they were vintage shingles. We wanted that vintage look when we were done. And they were donated to the house by Don Grissom of Eagle Point. We had 2 contractors work on the house with us, and they donated 50% of their time and labor to help us out. Blackberry bushes were coming up through the floor in the living room. There were fire spots in several places inside the house where fires had been started in the past. And the other major obstacle we had was the county politics. Yeah. At that point in time, which was 2001, they required a building permit, believe it or not, and they wanted us to bring the Woodhouse up to county code of 2001, which means a full foundation, rain gutters, downspouts, non-burnable material on the roof. In other words, they wanted to look like a brand new house, and our goal was just to bring it back to the way it looked in 1974 when Walter Wood died.
So didn't something happen where they weren't going to let you have the permit? What happened with the permit? You had somebody from the county come out and signed off.
Oh yeah, that's a good story. We were working on the Woodhouse with the 2 contractors, and we came to work one day, and there was a tag, a red tag on the front fence, cease and desist. Now, at that point in time, there was a chain link fence that was put up around the Woodhouse to keep it safe, to keep people away from it while we were doing the construction on the house. So anyway, one of the contractors and I went down to Jackson County with the red tag, and they explained at that point in time we required a building permit, and so we'd have to file for a basic building permit before we could continue the construction. Well, the builder that was with me, he's been in the valley forever. He knows all the ins and outs and the codes. And he said that all we're doing at this point in time is replacing the roof on the Woodhouse. And the gal behind the counter told him, well, you need a building permit to replace the Woodhouse roof. And he said, no, we don't. There is no permit required to replace a roof on a house. And she says, well, there is now, meaning just for the Woodhouse. And then she turned to me and told me that the Woodhouse is an eyesore and I need to burn it down. And at any rate, they would not give us a building permit. And we spent most of the day down there arguing with them. And my point was, picture the Woodhouse as an old tractor sitting in your front yard. All we're doing is painting it up nice for people to come by and take pictures of it. The Woodhouse itself is not livable. It's just an artifact. Well, they didn't see our point of view. So we got nowhere the first day. So the second day we went back and we saw the man in charge of the planning department. And fortunately, he had a lot of common sense and a brain. We told him what we were doing. And he says, yes, I know. I've been by that Woodhouse. I came by there from coming back from Lost Creek Lake this past weekend, and you guys are doing a good job. Tell you what, I will give you a building permit. It's going to be $13 and I believe 65 cents. Here's the information. You take this down to the counter on the first floor, give it to the people there, and they will give you a building permit, which we did. We went down there, turned in the paperwork, and unfortunately, we saw the same lady we did the day before, and she denied the building permit, and she went and talked to her boss, and he says, there's no way you can have a building permit. Well, he went and talked to the man that we talked to who was in charge, and he came back and he said, give him a building permit. So we paid the $13.65. We had the building permit and left. The guy in charge, when you talked to him previously, told me that when you get the building permit and you're going to have final inspection, call me Here's my personal phone number. I will come out and inspect, and I will sign off the building permit. Do not call anybody else. And that's what we did. And when we were done with the renovation, he came by, saw the house, thought it was great. I gave him the building permit. He signed off, and he says, "Have a nice day," and he left.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a nightmare. And we never had to deal with Jackson County again after that fiasco.
Thank goodness.
After the Woodhouse was completed, the renovation, that is, to bring it back to how it looked in 1974, as Woodhouse chairman, and with the help of my wife Charlotte, who was also a member of the Eagle Point Historical Society, we promoted events at the Woodhouse each year, and all the money went into a special Woodhouse account that I had set up with the society for the Woodhouse. And our goal there was to save enough money to try to buy the land, the 38 acres that the Woodhouse sat on at that time. At one of our events, we had a vendor, Mary from Crater Lake Cellars. As one of the fundraisers to gain money to the Woodhouse to put in the account to try to buy the property that it sat on, Crater Lake Cellars created a special wine. It was called the Woodhouse White. You can see the wine bottle with the Woodhouse label on your screens right now. Crater Lake Cellars sold the wine, and for every bottle they sold, they donated $2 to the Eagle Point Historical Society Woodhouse Fund. And they did that for several years. Right now, that bottle of wine is highly collectible because Crater Lake Cellars no longer exists, and they haven't made that wine for years. But during that time, the Medford Mail-Tribune did an article on the Woodhouse with all our pros and cons that we were dealing with. It was a nice article they did with pictures of the Woodhouse and everything. Well, after that story in the Mail-Tribune came out, I got a phone call from a fella in Salem, Oregon. His name was Judd, and I had no idea who he was, but he called to inquire about our fundraisers trying to buy the land for the Woodhouse. So I told him the whole story of the trials and tribulations we were going through, trying to acquire the property so the Woodhouse would be permanently saved at its present location. And he said, "Can you give me the tax lot number and information concerning the property and stuff," which I was glad to do. And he says, "Well, I think I might be able to help you out a little bit with your donations." And I go, "Cool." Of course, I thought he was going to donate some money to the Woodhouse so we can put it in our land fund. Well, I never heard from him again, not for quite a while. And it must have been about 6 months. Anyway, after about 6 months or so, I did get a phone call from Judd Parsons. He said, "Skip, this is Judd." And I go, "Who?" "Well, Judd Parsons." And I go, "Okay, fine. Well, I talked to you on the phone about 6 months ago." And I said, "Well, I've talked to a lot of people at that time concerning the Woodhouse. What was it about?" And he said, "Well, at the time I told you I could probably help you out with your issues of trying to acquire money for the land acquisition to save the Woodhouse." I said, "Okay, yes, I remember our conversation now." He said, "Well, I just called to let you know that I bought the property last night, and I am now the new owner of the Woodhouse property."
What?
Well, yeah, that's about what I said. "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes, I am. I am now your new landlord, and I'm going to help you to save the Woodhouse for future generations." And I go, "Oh, this is great." He says, "But we have to talk about the current lease you've got going." And I says, "Okay." He says, "I understand from what you told me, you are paying $200 a month for 1 acre. I said, "That's correct." He said, "And you're paying that to the previous owner." I says, "That's correct." He says, "Well, now that I'm the new owner, that lease is now void, and we're going to make a new lease. And it's not going to be $200 a month."
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I thought naturally, okay, we're going to get an increase on this. He says, "How about if I lease you 2 acres instead of 1 acre?" I said, "Man, we could sure use the extra acre for parking for our events and stuff. That would be great. How much would the lease be?" He says, "Well, it's not going to be $200 a month." And I said, "Okay." He says, "How about $1 a year for the 2 acres?"
What?
Oh, and I go, "Great. Are you serious?" He said, "I am serious." So because of his actions and buying the property and lowering the lease down to $1 a year, it made it more profitable now for us to continue on with fundraisers basically just for the house. We no longer had to worry about the land because that was now taken care of.
Thank you, Judd.
Definitely. Well, shortly after that, we had a farm festival at the Woodhouse. And let's see, I think he bought, if I remember right, bought the Woodhouse property in, around May 6th, 2006. Later in May, we had our annual farm festival. And Crater Lake Cellars was there. Mary, who I've known since she was a little girl, she owned Crater Lake Cellars, and she was having wine tasting. And we had other vendors there selling their wares and everything. And we had antique tractors and so on. And it was all fundraisers for the house so we could pay our light bills and so on. Anyway, Judd came to that farm festival, and he tracked me down, and he introduced himself to me, told me he was our new landlord. And of course, I thanked him gratefully for what he had done and helped us save the Woodhouse. And I said, mosey around and see everything that's going on here. It's quite a interesting site with all the farm equipment and everything, which he did. Well, as he was leaving, I noticed he stopped and talked to Mary at Crater Lake Cellars, and they talked at great length. And then he left. So knowing Mary for as long as I have, I went over and I says, oh, I see you met our new landlord. And she says, no, I've known Judd for years. And I go, really? She says, you have absolutely no clue who he is, do you? And I said, yeah, he's Judd Parsons. He lives in Salem. And he bought the Woodhouse property to help us save the house. And she says, yes, but you ever hear a place called Hillcrest Orchards in Medford? And I go, yeah, that's an icon in Medford. It's been around for like 100 years. The Parsons family pretty much founded the Hillcrest Orchard. She says, that's him. That's Judd Parsons from Hillcrest Orchards. And I go, dead silence. Are you kidding me? I had absolutely no idea who he was. Well, anyway, he's our savior, and thanks to him, the Woodhouse is now safe for future generations. In 2008, the Eagle Point Historical Society dissolved. The reason that happened was, again, Jackson County. Let's backtrack a little bit. Back, I think it was 1945 or something like that, there was a state bond issue for historic preservation here in Oregon. And it was voted on by the people and passed, and a certain percentage of property taxes went to historical preservation throughout the state of Oregon. And that's where the Eagle Point Historical Society was getting their funding. Well, in 2007, July of 2007, the county commissioners decided to revoke the bond issue for historical preservation for Jackson County. And there was no more income for the Eagle Point Historical Society. And at that time, the only thing that was making money for the museum was the Woodhouse. So the board members of the Eagle Point Historical Society, at one of their board meetings, well, they voted on just to completely dissolve the Eagle Point Historical Society. And prior to that, they approached the city of Eagle Point, asking them if they would want the museum and all its assets and artifacts within the museum building. And they said they would. However, there were several stipulations. One of them was that the Woodhouse had to be broken away from the Historical Society because it was in the county and they didn't want any part of having anything in the county to deal with the county government and so on. So at the board meeting, the board of members decided to, at that point in time, break away the Woodhouse from the museum itself so that the city of Eagle Point could take over the museum. Well, my wife and I volunteered to form a nonprofit, and once that was formed, we would take the Woodhouse, and which we did. It took a year through the IRS for us to become a 501c3 nonprofit, and we had a lawyer working with us, free gratis. He did everything that we needed to be done, all for free. And
Bill Mansfield.
Yeah, Bill Mansfield, bless his heart. And we formed the Woodhouse Preservation Group at that time, which is, like I mentioned earlier, with my wife and I and our daughter, Becky.
That was October of 2008.
October 2008, correct. Under IRS rules, you have to have a minimum of 3 board members. That's what we did, just 3 people. We have no membership. We are not a society. We are the Woodhouse Preservation Group, which is a group of people, the 3 of us, to preserve the Woodhouse. And we do have volunteers that help us out as well at our fundraisers. Anyway, after we formed the nonprofit and was official through the IRS, then the museum was conveyed to the city of Eagle Point. And of course, we got the Woodhouse. And at that point in time, the Woodhouse was now its own entity. After the Woodhouse was conveyed to the Woodhouse Preservation Group, further preservation was done on the house, including donations of artifacts for the property surrounding the house, such as all the tractors and farm equipment that we have there on display for people to see and take pictures of. And also all the artifacts in the house itself were all donated as well. In 2019, Judd Parsons and myself came up with a 60-year lease to further preserve the Woodhouse, and he gave us another acre. So we now have 3 acres because our events have gotten so big, we were running out of parking. So he gave us 3 acres, still at $1 a year for the next 60 years. And I told Judd, when the lease is up in 60 years, I will be here to sign it.
Now, and on that too, we want to give a special shout out to his wife, Diana, because she was also kind of the instigator in him purchasing the property, right?
Yeah, she was probably the main instigator because she talked to me first at great length and then gave the phone initially to Judd. And then that's when Judd and I were talking about the property and the troubles we were going through trying to save the house and buy the property at that time.
And she's an Eagle Point resident, or was an Eagle Point resident.
Right. She now lives in Salem with Judd.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about events at the Woodhouse because we do have bills to pay and we rely solely on donations and money raised from fundraisers to help keep the Woodhouse open and running. We have power, we have alarm systems to pay, but we do need some funding to keep open every year.
And there is no payroll at the Woodhouse. Nobody gets paid for anything they do. 100% of the donations go directly to the Woodhouse to pay the bills and to keep it open to the public.
Right. So we rely on the generosity of our community and our volunteers to help keep us open. So some of the events that we have a farm festival. The farm festival is usually held in May. Each year we have lots of booths and vendors coming out. We have several cookie ladies that come to our events that make chocolate chip cookies and other types of cookies on our functioning wood stove that we have in the kitchen. We also have a harvest festival that we hold in October. That's another big event where people can come out and see our vendors and our booths and any special things that we have. Another thing we do is Halloween open house at the Woodhouse. We decorate with pumpkins and cobwebs, and we have spooky music, and the kids can come by and trick or treat and get some candy while, parents and other people can come inside and take a view of the inside of the house and see what we're doing in there. Around Christmas time, we have one of our bigger events, our more favorite of our events. We celebrate Christmas. So end of November, we usually decorate for Christmas. We have a bunch of volunteers come out. We put up the lights, we put up candy canes, we do all sorts of stuff. And then before Christmas, we have a special day where Santa comes to visit. So we have Santa at the Woodhouse. Kids and families can come in. We have a toy drive. So throughout the year, people can donate toys, either gently used, or we have some people who donate money to buy new toys. And so kids can come and visit Santa, tell them what they want for Christmas, and they can leave with a toy and a candy cane or some candy or whatever. So that's a really fun event that we have. Something we no longer do, but we did at one point, was, I think it was a group out in Klamath Falls that reenacts the Civil War.
Yeah, Klamath Falls in Grants Pass.
So we used to have a Civil War event out at the Woodhouse. So this event was 3 days when we had it. Fridays, school kids would come out and be able to check everything out at the Woodhouse. And then Saturdays and Sundays were open to the public. They do Civil War reenactments. You see the cannon there. They'd actually shoot off that cannon. It was really loud. It had a big boom.
They shot it off every 15 minutes. There was a series of tents around the perimeter of the Woodhouse, and each one was a different type of history about the Civil War. And the kids would gather in front of each tent, and every 15 minutes they would fire the cannon, and then the kids would move to the next tent down to learn about additional history, weaponry or whatever about the Civil War. It was quite a deal when they put it on.
Yeah, it was very cool. Aside from events, we also rent out the Woodhouse location if you want to hold something special there. We've had some weddings there. One of them was actually the great-great-great-granddaughter of Marvin Wood. She came out and got married on the Woodhouse grounds. And those are what we usually do to help fundraise for the Woodhouse.
Well, as a side note, the year 2020, which was probably a bad year for all of us with the pandemic and what have you, that was the 150th anniversary of the Woodhouse. The Woodhouse was built in 1870, and 2020 was the 150th anniversary. Now, let's put that in perspective a little bit. When you say 1870, it really sounds old, but is it really that old? Well, most people, if not everyone, has heard about the massacre at Little Bighorn. General Custer. Well, that happened in 1876, 6 years after the Woodhouse was built. Also, in 1886, the famous Native American Geronimo was captured, 16 years after the Woodhouse was built. So that pretty much explains how old the Woodhouse really is for this location. 150 years ago, that's pretty old for the Oregon area.
We're lucky to have it still standing.
And it's still standing.
Okay, so now we'll move on to community involvement.
100% of the money that we receive through donations, as I said earlier, goes to preserving the Woodhouse and paying the expenses. And we, through our fundraisers, we get money donated. And also we have many people that have donated artifacts from time to time. They'll come to an event and say, oh, I have this in my yard that I don't no longer need. Would you guys like to have it for the Woodhouse? So that's how we've been getting most of our artifacts. We also have, in the living room of the Woodhouse, 2 benefactor boards, as you see on the screen right now. Anyone that donates $100 or more or puts in $100 worth of labor gets their name put on our benefactor board in the Woodhouse.
We also reach out to our community through social media. So the Woodhouse is old, but we are trying to stay up to date a little bit when it comes to modern technology. So we do have a Facebook page. We post a lot of the events that we do to promote on there. So if you just go to Facebook and you search for Woodhouse, Eagle Point, Oregon, you will be able to find our page. And if you like us, then you'll be able to keep updated on the things and goings-ons that are happening at the Woodhouse. Also, we have our own website. So that's where you can find a lot of content about the Woodhouse. We're at www.oldwoodhouse.org. You can find galleries of photos. I think you can find a family tree. There's a lot of history from the Woodhouse posted online.
All of Marvin Wood's Civil War history's on there.
Cool. Yeah, so that's probably the best resource if you're looking for like historical stuff about the Woodhouse. You can go to our website. We also have a YouTube channel. You can find our YouTube channel through a link on our website. That's probably the best way to get there. And we don't have much up there right now, but hopefully once we start getting going again on our events, we can post more videos up there. A lot of stuff is kind of come to a halt because of 2020. So we're hoping once things start getting better, we can get back to our events. You can also find us on Instagram. Find us at the Woodhouse 1870. And again, once we have more stuff going on, we'll be posting up some photos of things that we have going on at the Woodhouse.
The Woodhouse is also the most painted and photographed house in the Pacific Northwest. There's pictures of it all over the world, art paintings as well. We've had people come by at our events telling us that, wow, we saw a picture at the Woodhouse at a restaurant in Kansas when we were there. And one person came by at one of our events from Australia, and she even saw a picture of the Woodhouse down in Australia. So the Woodhouse is kind of famous, and photos of it do get around.
I think my favorite is a postcard I found somewhere out of state that says "Retire in Oregon," and it showed the dilapidated photo of the Woodhouse almost falling down.
You know, it said "Fixer Upper" also.
Yeah. We've also had companies and organizations around the valley want to come and use the house as a backdrop. Several years ago, we had a large automotive group come out and shoot a commercial in front of the Woodhouse, using it as a landmark piece of the valley. We've had car clubs come out. We had the Chevrolet versus Ford, kind of like car shootout thing there.
The Chevrolet won.
Good. And we've also had Motorcycle USA was highlighting a Kawasaki motorcycle, and they shot it out in front of the Woodhouse, and that was part of the online magazine for that. We've also had the Sheriff's Posse, the Jackson County Sheriff's Posse, come out to the Woodhouse, and they staged some photos, and they submitted those photos and video to the Rose Parade in Pasadena.
We have a lot of great volunteers at the Woodhouse, approximately between 10 and 12, depending upon the event. Most of them have been with us since about 2008. They really work hard for what we need to do. Without them, we can't do the events that we do. They help us with maintenance as well, and if we need anything done, we give them a call, and they're there. Unfortunately, the Woodhouse has been closed since March of 2020 because of the pandemic, and it looks like it will probably be closed most, if not all, of 2021 as well until the situation gets rectified. But once we get fired up again, all our events will be back, and we'll also do fundraisers so that we can keep the house open for future generations.
Just to kind of highlight those volunteers some more, we put together a video. This is going into Christmas of 2019 of the volunteers who have come down and help us decorate the Woodhouse. So enjoy this video.
Just want to add, after you saw that video, we would be totally lost without our volunteers. They make the Woodhouse possible. Without them, we can't do what we do. And another person I'd like to thank is Dennis Powers of Ashland. We have a riding lawnmower at the Woodhouse. We've had it about 15, 16 years now. And it was donated initially, brand new. And that poor thing has worked itself to death, and it's just about worn out. The call went out for new donation for a new lawnmower, riding lawnmower, and Dennis Powers came through and bought the Woodhouse a brand new Husqvarna riding lawnmower, and it even has a front bumper on it. Without that, we'd be dead in the water. So I just want to thank Dennis Powers for his fantastic donation for the new riding lawnmower to help us out.
So back in 2012, Premier West Bank held their first annual Community Service Award. So this award was created to put a spotlight on veterans and the community service work that they do here in the Valley. So I nominated my dad because he is a veteran from the Navy, and because of all the work, the dedication, and the blood, sweat, and tears that he put into the Woodhouse. So I nominated him. He became one of 5 finalists, and then the community got to vote on who they thought should win the Community Service Award. And to all of our elation, my dad won. And so thanks to him, the Woodhouse is still standing, and he was given the honor of the Community Service Award in 2012. So I just want to say thank you, Dad, for preserving such an icon of the Valley.
You're welcome, and I might add all the money for the service award went directly to the Woodhouse, and also the little lady you see on your screen on the far right is Vera Wood Jones. She's the granddaughter of Walter Wood, and she's one of our biggest supporters, and she lives in the Eagle Point area.
So thank you, Vera. Thank you, my dad. Thank you to everyone who volunteers or donates time or just speaks about the Woodhouse.
In closing, through the years, despite the heavy rain, wind, snow, having been set on fire several times, the Columbus Day storm, and Jackson County politics, the Woodhouse still stands to welcome you to visit and see how living was 151 years ago. And hopefully, the Woodhouse will still be standing 100 years from today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for attending.